Here they come.
Welcome to another edition of Here They Come. I'm Paul Ramlow.
And I'm Kate Lockhart.
Thanks for joining us for this week's show. Kate, kicking things off, news out of Pennsylvania this week. Penn National Gaming, Inc. announced that they have entered into a definitive agreement to purchase Beulah Park, the thoroughbred racetrack in Grove City, Ohio. This gives Penn National Gaming two racetracks here in the state of Ohio, as they also own Raceway Park, the standardbred track in Toledo. Interestingly enough, they also are in line to build freestanding casinos in both Toledo, home of Raceway Park, and Columbus, home of Beulah Park. But they said they will still push forward to get slots at the racetracks here in Ohio.
Yeah, they recognize that slots are the important piece of the puzzle that's missing right now in terms of supporting racing in Ohio.
Yeah, the latest of several attempts to allow video slots at racetracks in Ohio was derailed several months ago when the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that Governor Ted Strickland could not simply issue the order, but that a voter referendum could be allowed. Signatures are now being verified so the issue can be placed on the ballot in November. Let's have a positive thought and get those slots at racetracks here in Ohio.
There was a great article in the USTA newsroom this week about the hot start that George Brennan is off to this year. Not only is he doing really well in the Big M and compared to other drivers at the Meadowlands, but he's also doing well compared to drivers across North America. Right now he's currently in the lead in purses won with $1.64 million. Paul caught up with George to talk about his hot start this season.
George, thanks for joining us today. What's been the key to your fast start so far this season?
You know, it's something I really can't explain because I haven't done anything different than I've ever had before. You know, just showing up and racing all the races I can do and try to win as many races as I can. You know, same thing I've always been doing throughout my career.
Well, you're on pace right now to break your career high in wins, which was 457 back in 1998. But just 2 months into the season, is it still too early to think about that?
Well, I'm not going to have, you know, back then I raced a lot more, too. I used to race about 2,800 times a year. And, you know, I just don't race that much anymore. I only race about 2,000 to 2,200 times a year. So it would be awful hard to win 600 races, you know, in those amount of starts.
Now, you had a big weekend last weekend at the Meadowlands, especially on Friday when you won the Tender Loving Care Final with Ozan Moyne and the overbid first leg with Ramona de Soma. Tell us a little bit about Ramona de Soma. You've been driving her quite a bit this year so far at the Meadowlands.
Yeah, I drove Ramona de Soma last year, this year. You know, she likes to come off the pace. I race her at the mile track, half-mile track, and, you know, she tries really hard. She's a good mare, you know. Maybe not at the top level.
Well, you've been driving at the Meadowlands now for the last 15 years, George. You've driven a lot of great horses, won a lot of major races. Looking back on the last 15 years, what would you say would be your favorite moments and your favorite horses?
Probably the favorite moment would be the day Holborn Hannah were pacing 46-4 and set the world record. You know, winning the Meadowlands pace with Hot Lead in 96. I mean, there's been plenty of them there.
That's great. Back when you drove Glidemaster to complete the Triple Crown by winning the Yonkers Trot, you substituted for John Campbell, who got injured in the Breeders' Crown prior to that race. What do you remember about Blair Burgess coming up to you and asking you to drive that horse in the Yonkers Trot?
It was hit or miss if he was going to go to to race on a half-mile track to complete the Triple Crown because he'd never been on a half-mile track before, and then Blair decided to take him, and the rest is history. You know, he's a Triple Crown winner.
Now, you've won a lot of major races, but is there one race you'd still like to win? Say, boy, I wish I could win this race.
Definitely want to win Jug and then Hamiltonian, as does everybody, every other driver and trainer, owner in this game. But, I mean, you know, those two races are still out there, and I like to win them someday.
All right, that's great. Well, George, I appreciate you taking the time to join us this week. Continued success throughout the 2010 season and into the future.
Okay, thanks a lot. It's my pleasure.
Millionaire standardbred Taser Gun was back in Illinois this week. But he wasn't racing. He was actually showing in a breed demonstration by the American Standardbred Adoption Program at the Illinois Horse Fair.
Nice to see Taser Gun go back to the site of some of his many big race wins in Springfield. Just a note about ASAP, they are currently the home to 26 horses, the majority standardbreds. Because the program is lifetime, Susan Wellman sees horses adopted, but also some return to the program because of the economy. News out of Delaware early this week, Kate. Veteran trainer Nick Callahan returned to his home in Greenwood, Delaware, following a weekend training accident which required him to have pelvis surgery. Callahan was completing a training trip behind Tom's Toy, a 4-year-old pacing mare recently added to his stable, when his sulky wheel ran over an obstruction and ousted Callahan from the bike.
It's interesting, Paul. Sometimes I think we forget how dangerous it can be just to sit behind one of these horses, even for a training trip. So it's another example of an unfortunate accident, but we wish all the best to Nick for a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
This week, we saw that 90 horses were nominated to the North America Cup. It's an impressive list of horses, a lot of horses we saw on Stan Bergstein's experimental ratings. Paul, are there any standouts to you?
Yeah, I think Sports Rider, who's the Dan Patch and the O'Brien Award champion 2-year-old pacing colt, leads this list of 90. Also on the list is All Speed Hanover, who's the only horse that beat Sports Rider at the Breeders' Crown last year at Woodbine. First $1 million race of the season, and late June 26th, the date for the North America Cup.
Yeah, I noticed that Malicious, a horse that Dean Hoffman pointed out as one to watch in his interview on an earlier episode, is also nominated to the race. So hopefully it should be a good turnout and an exciting race.
Now it's time for this week's edition of the Hollywood Minute with Meadowlands statistician Bob Hollywood Heyden and Nicole Kraft. Brought to you by Hoofbeats Magazine, reporting with horsepower.
Well, hello, Holly. How's everything going in Jersey today?
Doing very well. Spring is a little bit early this year, and everybody around here will take it. We'll take a little extra time this year. A little longer spring and summer on the menu, hopefully.
Well, we had another New Jersey visitor on a little bit earlier, George Brennan. He had some great stuff to say to Paul Ramlow today.
He's averaging just under 2.5 wins a night. That's a record pace at the Meadowlands. And that's saying something, doing it here against the best drivers. He was the first driver to 100 wins. If you look at George's past, I mean, he's done so many things, but he's done it kind of quietly. He won 4 Sweethearts in a 6-year period from 99 through 04. Remember when he first started out, he had 2 2-year-old divisional champions in the same year for Liz Cannell, a stud named Sue and Chippy's Ruler. Remember the good work he did with Galleria back in 1998-99? And his first Meadowlands win also came with a trotter, Indianapolis, back in 1994. Maybe the best stat for George Brennan is the 3 6-winner nights he's had at the Meadowlands. Now consider that nobody won 6 races in a night at the Meadowlands until 1981 when Campbell did it, and Waples and O'Donnell followed the next year doing the same thing. So he's done it in the first 2 months, an unbelievable role. But if you think of George Brennan, you might think of the time he won 21 races back in back-to-back days, back in August of 2006, 2 consecutive double-digit winner days, and that was just a week after he set the world record with Holborn Hanover 46-4. So while some people might be caught off guard by George Brennan's recent success, he's been doing it for quite a while and is likely to be the next member of the $100 million win club.
Well, that is great to hear. Hey, we have a trivia question that came in from, we just on a New Jersey roll here, it seems, because Hawthorne, New Jersey was the site of our latest question. Came from John Quimby out there. He wanted to try to stump you with this question. On what date and at what track did the first triple dead heat in harness racing occur?
Well, I took a peek. I did know where it happened, and I did know the year. But I must admit, I took a peek into the trotting and pacing guide for the particulars. I knew it was freehold back in '53 because I remember Carmen Bellotti used to work in the press box, was actually there that day, and I think he did the release. So it was 2-12-2 at freehold, October 3rd, '53. 3 horses across the wire named Patchover, Payne Howe, and Penny Maid. So there have been a bunch since, but that's the one that got it going.
Well, that is very impressive. And, I don't know, I think a lot of people don't realize you can get an unbelievable amount of information out of that trotting and pacing guide. We have the 2010 editions getting ready to come out just about a week, and thank you for your help on that. You certainly have contributed over the years, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate all you do for us here.
Great. Love the trotting and pacing guide.
Thanks, Bob. Speaking of drivers at the Meadowlands video department put together a video in which Bob Hollywood Heyden asked drivers who they thought the top 5 drivers of all time were. It was interesting to hear who people named. There were some names that got numerous mentions, like John Campbell. Bill O'Donnell was one that was named a couple of times. Brian Sears. And it was interesting for me to see both the old-timers, or what you want to call old-time drivers, who were mentioned, as well as people who are currently driving. There were quite a few current drivers that were on the list. Paul, who would make your list?
My list would probably be John Campbell right at the top. How can you not go with that? I'd go Stanley Dancer from his, the age group back in the 60s and the 70s. Hervé Filion drove a lot of horses to a lot of wins. He leads all North American drivers in wins. I think those would be my 3 top drivers of all time.
Yeah, Stanley Dancer was one who I think he was only mentioned once by Yannick Gingras. But there were others that were mentioned, like Mike LeChance got a number of mentions. I know Ron Pierce was one of the current drivers who got a number of mentions. And Jack Moiseyev. It was interesting to see what those drivers have. I think the Meadowlands is doing a great job with those videos. It's nice to see more web content for harness fans.
It gives you more things to talk about, too.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Here They Come. This week, we'd like to thank George Brennan, Bob Hollywood Heyden, Nicole Kraft, and our producer, Rich Johnston. I'm Kate Lockhart.
And I'm Paul Ramlow.
Be sure to check us out on iTunes, YouTube, or Facebook, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Here They Come.